faces possible escalation.
Now the details. The federal government has today charged 3 men over the kidnap of children and teachers in Oluyole local government area of Oyo State. Those arraigned were Abdulrazak Umar, Yunusa Musa, and Shamsu Sani. The 10-count charge filed before the Federal High Court Abuja borders on terrorism, kidnapping, concealment, incitement, and illegal mining. The defendants, all from Suleja local government area of Niger State, are alleged to have conspired with one Mohammed Sani, Jubril Mohammed, and Ibrahim Kabab between January and May 2026 to kidnap school children and teachers in Oyo State. They are further alleged to have aided the kidnap of the school children and teachers and to have concealed information regarding the identities and activities of the alleged masterminds despite knowledge of the plot. According to a security source, the suspects are expected to appear in court next week, having concluded their investigation, while others are still being probed as the agency is insistent on diligent investigation.
The Christian Council of Nigeria, CCN, Oyo State Chapter, has hailed Governor Seyi Makinde's appeal to the United Nations to investigate the recent abduction ordeal of school pupils and teachers in the Oluyole local government area of the state. This came at the end of the Council's general meeting held in Isheyin in the Okyogun zone of the state. A press release issued by Chairman of the Christian Council, Bishop Ademola Moradio, described Governor Makinde's call as consistent with the UN's global mandate to safeguard children and ensure accountability in cases of mass abduction. The release noted that the United Nations has previously supported investigations into similar incidents such as the Chibok schoolgirls abduction in 2014 and the Dapchi schoolgirls abduction in 2018. The Oyo State chapter of the Christian Council of Nigeria therefore supported Governor Makinde's call, adding that a transparent, impartial inquiry will restore public confidence, deliver justice to victims and their families, and strengthen the collective resolve to protect citizens. The Council further assured the affected families of its continued prayers and moral support, while urging citizens to remain vigilant and cooperate with security agencies by reporting suspicious activities to the appropriate authorities.
In the meantime, in continuation of gratitude to Almighty God over the safe return of abducted victims of the May 15th in Oluyole local government area of Oyo State, special interfaith prayers were held today at the palace of Esele, one of the affected communities. The prayers were led by both Christian and Islamic leaders. BSO's reporter in Ogbomoso, Aderemi Akomu, was at the palace during the prayers. His report is presented by staff reporter Tola Teriba.
Residents of Esele community in Oluyole local government area of Oyo State on Friday gathered at the palace of the town to organize special interfaith prayers. The prayers were intended to appreciate God for securing a school principal, 4 teachers and 39 school children abducted during the deadly attack on 3 schools in the Oluyole local government area of Oyo State on May 15, 2026. The prayers provided avenues for religious leaders like Pastor Kola Oladokun, Pastor Peter Olayemi, Prophet Michael Adebayo, Imam Abdulwahid Hamid, Sheikh Gani Majobaje, Alfa Razak Oyelakin, among others, to raise voices of thank you to Almighty God for His intervention during the period of sorrow. They also sought divine intervention to prevent the occurrence of such gory incidents. Pastor Kola Oladokun and Prophet Michael Adebayo said, God has worked wonders through the release of abductees of the May 15 attack, calling on the faithful to serve God wholeheartedly.
Adúpẹ́ fọ́lọ́run torí pé ìpéjọpọ̀ wa ya wá fi dúpẹ́ fọ́lọ́run ni. Torí pé la fi sọ wípé báwa bá yíra nílẹ̀ táwa bá yéra nílẹ̀ kó tó fún yín rẹ o bàbá. nítorí pé ọlọ́run dáhùn àdúrà wa kì í ṣagbára wa bó tiẹ̀ jẹ́ pé ní gbogbo àgbáyé ni àwọn èèyàn ti dìde tí wọ́n ti bá wa gbàdúrà ṣùgbọ́n a lè sùn wọn a lè wo títí dijọ́ táwọn ọmọ yẹn dé tí ẹ rí i pé ẹnu ọ̀rọ̀ wa tọ́pẹ́ àbí ọ̀tọ́pẹ́. Special prayers were offered for divine protection of residents of the area, Ogbomoso and Oyo State in general. In a similar development, Islamic leaders and faithful organized special prayers to appreciate Almighty Allah as the abducted person survived the traumatic period experienced for 56 days in captivity. The Quran was recited during the special prayer led by the chief imam of Esiele, Imam Abdul Wahid Hamid, and Nabi of Esiele, Sheikh Gani Majekobaje. In their separate interviews with BCS News, Imam Abdul Wahid Hamid and Alfa Razak Oyelakin said, Almighty Allah supersedes all, commending all supportive hands in securing the release of the abductees.
Dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ Ọlọ́run àti dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ gbogbo àwọn tí wọ́n dìde nígbà tí ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀ yìí ṣẹlẹ̀. Ó bẹ̀rẹ̀ láti federal to district to the local government tó fi dé nùlú àtàwọn ọba lọ́ba àwọn òjòyè àtàwọn èèyàn náà tí Ọlọ́run kàyẹ nínú ayé tí wọ́n dìde sí wa látàrí oore tọ́lọ́run ṣe fún àwọn kó àwọn ọmọ wa lọ láàyè. Ọlọ́run ti sọ pé ká tún lé wọn láàyè padà náà ní ọjọ́ ọ̀jẹ̀jọ.
They also sought for restructuring of the education system in the area to aid the education of children. Offering special prayers for the slain teachers and security operatives, Imam Koso of Oyo, Imam Mustafa Najimdin maintained that everything is best known to Allah, praying to God to give the bereaved families the fortitude to bear the loss. The Elesiele of Esiele, Obatajuddin Abioye, and his counterparts in Esiele Oyo, Oba David Oladele, who were optimistic as the rescued abductees reunited with their families, said the session was to appreciate God over the release of the abductees. The prayer session was rounded off with special Jumat service at the Central Mosque Esiele, where Imam Abdul Wahid Hamid led the 2 Raka prayer.
The Oyo State Head of Service, Dr. Adenike Fashino, has reaffirmed the commitment of the state government to the welfare and well-being of retired executive secretaries and general managers in the state. Dr. Fashino gave the assurance while receiving members of the Association of Retired Executive Secretaries and General Managers, led by its Vice President, Mr. Dotun Omokemi, who paid a courtesy visit and congratulatory visit at her office today. The head of service pledged to give the issues raised the necessary attention through the appropriate government channels, stressing that government is a continuum. She also reaffirmed a commitment to fairness, equity, and justice in addressing matters affecting retired executive secretaries and general managers. Earlier, the vice chairman of the association pledged continued support and cooperation of the association to the head of service and the Oyo State government.
Troops of Operation Fansa Yamma have rescued 9 kidnapped victims, recovered 56 rustled livestock, and arrested a suspected terrorist in separate intelligence-led operations across Katsina State. The Media Information Officer of the operation, Lieutenant Colonel Aliyu Danja, disclosed this in a statement today, saying the operations were part of ongoing efforts to combat terrorism and other criminal activities in the northwest. According to him, troops of Sector 2, while on a fighting patrol in Faskari local government area, rescued 9 kidnapped victims comprising 3 women, 4 men and 2 children. Preliminary investigations revealed that the victims were abducted by terrorists on the 9th of July 2026 along the Safi-Kuchere Road in Safi local government area of Zamfara State. The victims told the troops that they escaped from the terrorist hideout after their captors fell asleep before they were intercepted and rescued by security personnel.
President Bola Tinubu has signed the Presidential Executive Order on Virtual Assets Coordination 2026, establishing a new interagency framework to harmonize the regulation of virtual assets and strengthen oversight of Nigeria's rapidly expanding digital economy. According to a statement issued today by the President's Special Advisor on Information and Strategy, Bayo Ononuga, the order was signed pursuant to Section 5 of the 1999 Constitution to address growing regulatory fragmentation. The executive order, which takes immediate effect, creates a virtual asset council to coordinate the activities of key financial, revenue, security and regulatory agencies. The presidency said the absence of coordinated oversight had created loopholes exploited by fraudulent and unregistered operators, exposing Nigerians to financial losses, cybersecurity threats, data privacy risks, and other criminal activities. The statement explained that the move was aimed at protecting citizens from fraud while combating money laundering and terrorism financing, improving revenue collection, and encouraging responsible innovation in the virtual assets sector.
In a similar development, the federal government says it is intensifying efforts to promote freer movements across Africa to boost trade, investment, and African Continental Free Trade Area implementation, AfCFTA. The Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Jumoke Oluyole, said this today in Abuja during an interview with journalists. Dr. Oluyole spoke on outcome of the Biashara Africa 2026 Forum, which was held recently in Togo. The minister said trade could not thrive where entrepreneurs and investors faced movement restrictions, adding that easier movement of people, goods and investments remain crucial to unlocking opportunities under the AfCFTA. According to her, mobility remains critical to the success of the AfCFTA, adding that Nigeria joined other African countries in reaffirming commitment to free movement of people, services and investments.
This broadcast of Newscope comes to you from the Broadcasting Corporation of Oluyole State, Ibadan. The office of the former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, has appealed the judgment of the Federal High Court, Abuja, concerning the forfeiture of certain properties linked to him. Reacting to the recent judgment through his media aide, Bello Doka, today, Malami stated that he respectfully disagrees with some aspects of the judgment, but he remains fully committed to the rule of law and independence of the judiciary. In line with his constitutional rights, he has instructed his legal team to immediately challenge the decision at the Court of Appeal. The office emphasized that the judgment is not the final determination of the matter and urged the public as well as the media to avoid premature conclusions while the judicial process runs its full course.
Political stakeholders have been urged to uphold democratic principles by allowing eligible individuals to freely contest elective positions and participate in the electoral process without intimidation or undue interference. The call was made by legal practitioners Adebimpe Adelowo Esquire and Sharafaddin Soni Esquire during a discussion on the topic, INEC nomination portal closure, 2027 ticket sealed. On BCO's Current Affairs Breakfast Program AM 120, staff reporter Fidora Afolagboyi monitored the program.
With the closure of the Independent National Electoral Commission INEC nomination portal for the 2027 general elections, attention is shifting to candidates' eligibility, political party compliance with electoral guidelines, and preparations for the next phase of the electoral process. Speaking on BCOS Current Affairs Breakfast Program AM 120, legal practitioner Adebimpe Adelowo Esquire explained that the Electoral Act empowers INEC to determine its electoral timetable and operational guidelines, stressing that all political parties and aspirants must comply with the stipulated deadlines. He noted that internal disputes in some political parties delayed the emergence of candidates, adding that several nomination-related cases are already before the courts.
Every society, every process must have a timeline. If you close a particular process because that is as it is allowed by law, it shows that then you are improving the system.
I'm asking that because of how
the rightful candidate has not been uploaded. Definitely, that portal has to be opened by court's order for the rightful candidate to be uploaded. It shows that there are windows for political party to explore. But those political parties that were unable to upload their candidate, then it's final for them, except court, they approach court and court say otherwise.
Also speaking, legal practitioner Sharafaddin Sani Esquire urged politicians to allow INEC to discharge its constitutional responsibilities without undue interference and avoid frivolous litigation capable of disrupting the electoral process. He commended the media for sustaining voter education, particularly at the grassroots, and called for intensified public enlightenment ahead of the 2027 general elections.
You will discover that we have analyzed the problem they are currently facing now. Every one of them are conscious of holding on to power. I later discovered that they are not concerned about Nigerian interests. They are not concerned about the interests of you and I. Ask them what is the main problem. It is just the power distribution.
The guests also urged INEC to remain impartial and strictly comply with the provisions of the Electoral Act, while encouraging Nigerians to participate actively in the democratic process, vote responsibly, and reject vote buying and other forms of electoral malpractice. Fidora Afolagbe, BCOS News.
The National Examinations Council, NECO, has defended the integrity of Government Secondary School Oluyole in Dekina local government area of Kogi State, dismissing claims that the institution is a miracle center. The Examination Council stated that it has consistently presented candidates for the Senior School Certificate Examination since 2000. NECO made a clarification today while responding to allegations that the school, following the abduction of 5 persons, including examination officials and candidates during the ongoing 2026 SSCE. In a statement signed by its Acting Director of Information and Public Relations, Aziz Sani, the Council rejected the allegations, insisting that the school is a legitimate public institution owned by the Kogi State Government and has operated for more than 4 decades. Reaffirming its commitment to credible examinations, the Council said it maintains zero tolerance for examination malpractice and has introduced reforms under the leadership of its Registrar and Chief Executive, Professor Dantani Ibrahim Wushishi.
Stakeholders in the education sector have advocated increased investment in technical and vocational education as a sustainable solution to unemployment, poverty, and skills shortages in the country. They explained that strengthening technical colleges will equip more young Nigerians with practical skills needed for self-employment, entrepreneurship, and industrial development. B3's reporter Awao Ibrahim brings details.
Technical and vocational education is increasingly being recognized as a vital tool for national development, with experts emphasizing its role in producing a skilled workforce capable of meeting the demand of a rapidly changing economy. They note that by equipping young people with practical and employable skills, technical colleges help promote self-reliance, reduce unemployment, and create opportunity for entrepreneurship. Speaking with BCOS News, Director of the Polytechnic Ibadan, Dr. Taiwo Lasisi, reaffirmed the institution's commitment to producing graduates with the technical competence and hands-on experience required to compete in today's global economy. He explained that the adoption of technical and vocational education and training (TVET) across Nigeria polytechnics is transforming education from predominantly theoretical approach to practical, industry-driven learning that responds to labor market needs.
The impact is to make sure that graduates from polytechnics are well grounded, both intellectually, economically, and socially, for the development of the nation, and to be able to compete favorably in the world over. All polytechnics in Nigeria have embraced the policy of TVET to make sure that this nation develops.
Also speaking, the chairman of the Oyo State Board for Technical and Vocational Education, BOTAVED, Eda Ayoade Adekola, described technical education as a strategic pathway to job creation and economic empowerment. He noted that individuals who acquire technical skills are better positioned to become employers of labor rather than depend solely on scarce white-collar jobs. Eda Adekola, however, identified negative public perception as a major obstacle to the growth of technical colleges. He said many parents still believe technical colleges are meant only for academically weak students, a misconception that has continued to discourage enrollment despite the growing demand for skilled professionals.
Technical education empowers an individual that has it to be self-sufficient, to be self-sustaining, and to be able to stand on their own. Anybody with in-depth knowledge of technical education will not rely on government for employment. That person will not be looking for white-collar job in offices. That person will be an employer of labor, himself or herself.
Stakeholders therefore called for increased funding, improved learning facility, modern equipment, stronger collaboration between educational institutions and industries, as well as sustained public enlightenment to reposition technical and vocational education as a preferred pathway to employment, innovation, and sustainable national development. Awau Ibrahim, BCOS News.
On the foreign scene, the United States has struck bridges and an airport in Iran today, provoking Tehran to respond by hitting a power and desalination plant in Kuwait as the warring foes risked further escalation by expanding their targets to include infrastructure. At sea, where the renewed conflict has again cut off energy supplies from the Gulf, U.S. Marines boarded a tanker near the Strait of Hormuz. Another vessel was seized by armed men off Yemen, raising concerns over security in the Middle East, other big choke point for oil shipments at the mouth of the Red Sea. Washington and Tehran have been testing the limits of escalation since their ceasefire agreement collapsed last week, raising the prospect of a return to all-out war. As reports of today's escalation emerged, benchmark Brent crude oil prices surged by more than 3% to near $87, the highest level since an interim agreement a month ago aimed at ending the war.
To end this edition of Newscope, here again are the main points. The federal government has today charged 3 men over the kidnap of children and teachers in Oluyole local government area of Oyo State.
The Christian Council of Nigeria, CCN, Oyo State Chapter, has hailed Governor Seyi Makinde's appeal to the United Nations to investigate the recent abduction ordeal of school pupils and teachers in the Oluyole local government area of the state.
The former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, has appealed the judgment of the Federal High Court, Abuja, concerning the forfeiture of certain properties linked to him.
On the foreign scene, the United States has struck bridges and an airport in Iran today, provoking Tehran to respond by hitting a power and desalination plant in Kuwait as the warring foes risked further escalation by expanding their targets to include infrastructure.
If you see something suspicious, alert the authorities immediately for timely response. Be vigilant. That's all from Newscope Desk for now. It was packaged by Ajedoyi Oluyole and delivered by
Idowu Shekoni
and Jamila Elegbede. Thank you for listening, and do not forget to tune in for the Yoruba version at 8 p.m. Good evening.